Hi, everyone, and it's so nice to see friendly faces. And yes, we will talk a bit more about what well, this is not going to be so much about what the tag environmental sustainability does, but it is very, there is another talk on this that Kristina did that dives deeper into that. But we'll talk about why we are doing what we're doing. Um, So my name is Niki Manelodaki. I'm a software engineer at Grafana Labs, and I'm the chair of the Green Reviews Working Group, which is part of the CNCF Environmental Sustainability Tag.
Yeah, and my name is Kristina Devochko, and I'm a platform engineer at Every and also a tech lead at Environmental Sustainability Technical Advisory Group. And it's actually really nice to have 15 minutes instead of 5, so I don't need to stress about what exact words I'm going to say right now. But the reason for this talk, why it came up when we were discussing with Niki if we should submit some kind of a session around this topic to KubeCon and Cloud Native Con, was that we kind of together, more or less at the same time, agreed upon that, yeah, we see a lot of myths and misconceptions that keep happening or keep being spread around the topic of environmental sustainability, both in the cloud native community, but also in the tech industry in general. And in addition to that, there is also a high risk for greenwashing, which we will touch a little bit more upon shortly. And due to this, we feel that there is a need to utilize forums like KubeCon and Cloud Native Con, but also all the channels that we can, including also local meetups, in order to spread awareness around this topic and share factual data around the topic to prevent kind of this false information or myths from being spread even further, and instead present the kind of factual data that is backed up by research, for instance. And we would also like with this talk to encourage everyone to help out and be curious and challenge the information that you're going to hear. So this time we have a bit more than 4 minutes, so let's try to put on our Mythbuster hats and see if we can debunk the 4 myths around the topic of environmental sustainability in the cloud.
The first myth that we want to talk about is that a company can achieve net zero through carbon offsets. Well, first we can look at the definition of net zero and then talk about why it matters. So we chose to use the definition of the Science-Based Target Initiative, the SBTI. It's an organization which was co-founded by the United Nations, and it helps companies create sustainability targets and also set a path for how to meet those targets. So one of the requirements to reach net zero is that you need to halve your emissions by 2030, and then also further reduce them by 90 to 95% by 2050. So that is quite a large reduction in emissions that is needed. Only 5 to 10% can be neutralized through offsets. And carbon offsetting is also not a perfect solution. It can be quite controversial. I've seen people, staunch environmentalists be very much in favor, very much against. I think if it's coupled with the 90 to 95% reduction, I don't see why not. But the reduction is the focus, should be the focus of the work. And the reason why I'm happy that I can expand a little bit on this since we have more time. But the reason why we wanted to add this is because we see a lot of engineers in large companies who might not know what sustainability target their company has, especially at the really large companies, right? Publicly traded ones. And in fact, one way to push for cloud emission reduction measures internally would be if the company has a net zero target, then this reaches engineering. And this also reaches tooling, vendors, etc. And last but not least, if not, maybe this is one of the most important points, carbon offsetting. We saw an example in 2022. This is one example of many, where there were wildfires in North America, and these burned the forests that had been purchased as carbon offsets. So that destruction of the natural this natural environment also made those offsets redundant. So it's definitely not the way to go.
Another myth is also quite a popular one, and that is that moving to your applications and platforms to the cloud would make it green by default. And even if you kind of start searching for a combination of cloud and sustainability, you would see quite a lot of catchy titles like that, yes, go ahead and move everything you have right now to the cloud, and that's how you become more sustainable. And the reality is that doesn't quite work like that you become 100% green and sustainable by default. And there is multiple research out there available to kind of learn more about it. And one research document I would like to mention that came out from the Synergy research group, it forecasts that in the next 6 years, the average capacity of hyperscalers will more than double, in addition to constantly increasing total amount of data centers that are being built due to the growing demand from the consumers, and also impact of resource-intensive technologies like generative AI. And due to this growth, it also means that data center resource needs will also keep growing. And if we think about cloud, then the shared responsibility model always comes to mind. And in this case, the shared responsibility model becomes even more important. Cloud providers must do their part in order to improve the sustainability of the areas that they have control of. And that also includes availability and availability of transparent and up-to-date emissions data of their cloud offerings. But us as consumers of those cloud services must also do our part in order to measure and use cloud resources in the most energy and resource efficient manner. And it's not a one-time or one-day action. This is a continuous process, continuous effort that needs to be done, because our applications and platforms are also not static. They are dynamic and they change over time. And that's when it's important to see how this affects the efficiency of the cloud resources we're utilizing. And for instance, lift and shift approach that is very popular. It illustrates actually how in many cases a poorly designed and developed application, or even a poorly designed cloud deployment of that application, can be running on a public cloud provider that is very sustainable and green, and still generate more emissions than a fully optimized and well-architected application that may be running within a classic on-prem data center. Yeah, and then another myth is also quite popular, has really been talked a lot about lately, and that is about cost being a direct proxy metric for sustainability. And direct proxy metric in this case means that when there is something that we can't measure directly or easily, like sustainability of applications or platforms, we can use another correlative metric like cost to measure the same. And once again, in reality, it's not that easy and black and white, and there are multiple examples where this statement doesn't quite stand. For instance, choosing a region where you would like to provision your cloud services. Choosing a region that is powered by renewable energy sources is often more expensive. Reserving compute instances for a year or longer does provide a significant discount, but it actually prevents you from reducing resource usage when application needs or application load changes. And while turning off instances is often recommended as a cost optimization pillar, in reality, you may still be leasing the underlying hardware and making it unavailable for other customers to utilize. And even if you are not consuming compute time when turning off instances, there are still components like storage and networking that are used in order to be able to support turning on those instances at a later point. So we need to kind of be skeptical and remember about how this also works under the hood. And the most sustainable resources are, of course, those that don't exist. And that's why when we talk about the kind of first and easy and most straightforward steps that all of us can take, the easiest one and the most important one is to continuously delete and clean up orphaned and unneeded resources, because that it is just there idle, consuming basically wasting resources and consuming capacity that you don't utilize. So this is the easiest first step you can take for a more sustainable resource utilization in the cloud and outside of it.
And our last myth is related to, well, sometimes the myth is even just mentioning environmental sustainability in a report, in a product, PR, etc. So this leads to the topic of greenwashing. I think it's a difficult topic to talk about, but let's try. Let's start with the definition of greenwashing. This one is also a UN definition. It's the misleading statements that lead the public to believe that a company is doing more to protect the environment than it is. So how do we deal with this? As individuals, whenever we can look for transparency and accountability, or ask for transparency and accountability. Like if you are able to ask more questions or dig further into any kind of statement like that, that's a start. I also we wanted to bring this myth up as well, or this topic, because as individuals, there's also, how do we avoid this ourselves? This is a very relevant topic. For me, this is something that I check myself on very frequently. And also when other people are interested in, talking about sustainability, internally or externally, my question or my way of avoiding greenwashing is, are these words matched by action? That is a question I ask myself and the question I ask others. So if someone wants to talk about sustainability, are they contributing to a project that is, directly making an impact in that regard? Are they themselves trying to create spaces around this issue to enable other people? Are they committed to this issue in a long-term manner, or is it one of those things where it's just mentioned but there's not really much matter behind these words. Yeah, so that is the point on greenwashing, and where do we go from here? We trust, but we verify. We always ask questions, speak up, and share doubts, and also be curious and be vulnerable. And we look for credible sources. There's a lot of sources shared through the Green Software Foundation who have a newsletter, and they talk about this subject quite a lot. And you can also join the Environmental Sustainability Tag. We have meetings every 2 weeks. We have a channel on the CNCF Slack, which is very active, and we post a lot of links to things, articles, etc. And yeah, thank you for joining us today.